Yeah.
How many years later?
And I know it's so, I mean, the first time I had to set that up
Beautiful.
was last fall, and it was just like horrible. And actually I did with a new client, I said, you know what, I'm going to use that. And actually I had my Facebook ad rep, it was a tech person who did help me, but also he seemed a little rushed. So I don't know if it was just him or that time period or whatever. So I was like, well, I'm glad I have, some prior knowledge, because if I was super brand new, I don't know if we could have covered that in 40 minutes. So
Yeah,
to get it set up. But yeah, that is a process. And other tidbit of news, if you guys didn't hear, is they're actually going to start to just get rid of the web pixel, and just going to all be conversion API, which makes sense, because I mean, the main reason for the conversion API is to try and catch and track the people who are iOS users who've opted out of tracking. So then the benefit is we don't have to do any deduplication issues anymore. That's the worst thing when I go and I look in the ads manager, and if one's saying, not meeting best practices for deduplication, I'm like, come on, like just track it. Like, why is this not plug and play? Like, you really,
yeah.
So, but on the flip side too, for agencies, it's great, because there's a lot of business owners who don't want to have to deal with that. They'd rather pay somebody else to deal with it. So,
Oh, for sure, for sure. So,
but
so
yeah,
last month we kind of picking up where we left off. We talked a little bit
yeah,
about AI. Now, Chat GPT-4 is out, and we're freaking out too. I don't know if you've
yes,
messed with it.
yes, and
Yeah.
so amazing.
Yeah. So how does this kind of intersect? Because I know we talked about previously about like support and things like that. How does this intersect with the chatbot marketing world and what people would be using it for here? Like, what are your...
Yeah. So, I mean, it is this shiny new object. Like, oh my gosh, the Chat GPT experts that have come out with all these trainings has been nuts. I'm just like, really? You're training people on how to use Chat GPT? Like, it's kind of comical. There's always, it's a brand new thing, so people just jump into it, which is great though.
True.
For me, because there was a time, like I said, the chatbot winter, where everybody was like, I don't like chatbots. I'm like, no, they're still very useful, and all my clients still using them. But now it's like renewed interest in chatbots. But it is the shiny new object, and I think my first thing with that is I have to say, number one, don't think that you have to use it for your business, or if you're an agency, use it for your client's business. It is super complicated, and it adds an extra layer of where something can go wrong. And then also having, it's kind of like the conversion API setup, with having to set it up, connecting it to ChatGPT. So if you guys didn't hear, on Tuesday, they just announced ChatGPT 4, which is taking the 3 version so to the next level. If you haven't seen it yet, there is it's on YouTube. You can watch it. I watched it live when they were announcing and showing what ChatGPT 4 can do. So definitely check that out if you haven't yet, because it is pretty amazing, that AI capability. But the other thing though is, with ChatGPT also is, yes, it's helpful. And they also did mention this during the presentation. Don't 100% trust everything it says. I've even, in my own experience using it, I was trying to use it for some coding stuff, because again, I'm dangerous with coding. But it's like, oh, I had a client who needed to install a form on Wix. I'm just like, oh, I hate Wix. It's the worst. If I'm just like, I don't really use Wix, I'm like trying to figure it out. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go to ChatGPT and ask, how do I create a hidden field on the form that can send a keyword to a hidden form with that keyword. And so it was giving me directions on how to do it. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, and I said, this option isn't there. Oh, I apologize. In a different version. I'm just like, really? Why didn't you tell me this initially? So that's just multiple times it was and then also I did the same thing with needing a Google Sheets formula to do some complex formula in Google Sheets. I went to ChatGPT and I said, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. How do I do this where I have the order of the list being reversed? and it would give it to me, and then I would put it in a Google Sheet and I'd hit enter and it'd give me an error. So I'd give it what the error was. It's like, oh, I apologize, use this. I'm just like, why didn't you tell me this first time? So just for those of you who have not used ChatGPT, or if you have used it and you've just taken it as absolute truth, don't verify with that. But when it comes to chatbots, so I was going to do a big old training with the ChatGPT connection with ManyChat today, but with the new updated ChatGPT 4, which is so much better than ChatGPT 3. I mean, if you're going to go through the whole process of integrating, you should definitely do it with the better version. So I'm going to have that set up for the next call. But for this one, though, along those lines of having it be AI-like, up until ChatGPT came out, you could still pretty much have an AI bot, and especially for people who are new and beginners for chatbots, I'm going to show you that initial foundational step. So at least you know how you can create a bot that is AI, in the fact that you are thinking ahead of time foundationally of all the different potential scenarios that somebody can go through, like if they're coming in for a certain thing in your chatbot, like for example, scheduling an appointment, that you can try to prepare for those options, but knowing the fact that you have to train or improve it as you go along based off of input, because you can't anticipate everything that everybody says. But this will be the initial foundational piece. And then if you're ready to go to the next part, then my suggestion with that is Janice, which uses Google's dialogue flow. So that's the next level of AI that makes it really, I guess, more advanced. But ChatGPT would be the next one. And then in terms of like how, some people have been asked, how can I use, or what benefit would ChatGPT have in my business with a chatbot? First of all, really it goes into what exactly are you trying to do. So, are you asking, do you have random questions that you want to ask that's just out there? Most likely not. So you want to have it helpful for your bot to just take it to the next level. So one use case that I think is useful is when people provide their email, for example, making sure that it is a valid email. Not necessarily that it's checking the email, because again, you can't trust ChatGPT saying, hey, is this email a valid email? If I send an email to this email, will it reach a person? So not necessarily doing that, but having it say, asking it if it's a valid looking email, like is this a valid layout of an email? So one thing that happens a lot with chatbots, if you haven't experienced it yet, is when you ask for email, somebody can put like Gmail dot, and instead of com, they put .con on accident, because M and N is right next to each other, and they have fat fingers. So what that would do, obviously, is if you have any sort of automation set up, where you're adding it to your email service provider through either directly through ManyChat's API or through Zapier, for example, it will error out and it won't send it, or it will send it, again, depending on the email service provider. But then when it tries to send the email, obviously it won't send. So having that capability with ChatGPT or Dialogflow to make sure that it's a valid email is super helpful. And what I'm going to show you with the simple version, that's all internal inside of ManyChat, that's not really that difficult to set up. You can still verify that. The other piece too, with that upper advanced level with ChatGPT is and also Dialogflow, is intent. So that's where it gets really cool, where you can have the ability of a chatbot response being based off of intent. So is the person asking something that's positive, or does it sound negative? And then trying to provide an answer to them based off of that information. But again, just to give you a heads up, it's not like, oh, just set up the advanced bot and just walk away. No, you have to do a lot of training on it, and it can get frustrating at times for yourself, but also for the user, because it's like saying something that is totally off the wall, and you're just like, ah. So anyways, with that being said about the overall view of AI with chatbots, we'll start with the initial way that you can make your chatbot smart. We'll call it the smart bot. But let me share my screen. And also, if you guys have any, oh, you got it. I need
there you go.
approval to be able to share the screen. Thank you. And if you guys have any questions about just in general ChatGPT, your ideas of what you want to use, how you want to use a bot for, with the AI piece, ask it in the chat, and I can go over it too. Okay, so let me find my screen. There it is. Okay, take a drink here. Okay, so one of the first things that you can do with your bot to make it smart is through the use of keywords. So let's say you have a trigger step here that you have keywords. So you can connect keywords through Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. So of course, most people, if they're using, ads and, messaging, that is usually Facebook and Instagram. So if you use these keywords, here's the things that you can choose for some of the conditions of the keywords themselves. So message is, so if you choose that, then it has to be exactly that. So like, let's say, I'm just gonna put offer in here, because we can do a lot with that. So, and it's not, I put it capped, it's not case sensitive whatsoever. They could do it like that. They could do multiple, capital O, whatever, it would still go. But if they did offer exclamation point, or send me the offer, or the worst thing, and I'm saying the worst thing because you ask them, reply with the word offer below, and they do offer and then like a heart emoji, or okay, great, offer. And it's like, okay, just reply with the word. Like, why are you doing all this extra work? I don't understand. So that's what this is. Message is offer. So the other option, message contains, that would be if they sent it with an exclamation point, with that emoji or any other thing, but they had the word offer, then it would send it. So that is helpful. That makes it less work for you of people getting out of the automation, but also it can send stuff that it didn't mean to send. So like, let's say, for example, you're doing an offer with a lead magnet or something, like 7 tips for whatever, right? And then someone messages, says, hey, I opted in for your offer, but I didn't get it, or the next thing of saying like, but I scheduled an appointment with you and nobody called me or something. With this saying contains, it would still send that to them to say, hey, great, what's your email? And it doesn't make sense, right? So that's where the contains can get in trouble. And I think I mentioned this before one time, but for one of my restaurant clients, I was like, oh, if message contains thanks or thank you, I just said, you're welcome. And for one of my clients, they said, a customer came through and said, sorry, I can't make it today. My uncle died or grandma died or something like that. And I said, oh, you're welcome. And because they said thanks, but my grandpa died. I'm like, oh, you're welcome. It just sounded crass. So
Oh, no.
just but you don't think about those things until you experience it, and then you're just like, oh, this is horrible. So message contains, that's that example. Message contains whole word. So the difference between these two is very slight. So like, let's say someone said offering, that wouldn't be message contains, that would be the offer. If it was offering, so message contains whole word, then it wouldn't be that one, because it would be a separate word, right? So this one's a little bit more precise with the word. Trying to think of, like, if you said the or there, the is in there, so then it would be, that would help to differentiate between the two. But it's just a minor difference. Usually I don't use or specify, like whole word, unless there's something that I want to make sure, like it's a password or something, right? Because that's the other thing. You can use keywords to not, well, you can for starting steps, but you can use keywords and conditions, which I'll go over here in a second, for a password. So I've done that in the past, where like I've done an offer, like with a webinar or something, and I said, hey, if you want this offer, message my bot this password and you'll get it. And so it has to be specifically that word. So we want to make sure that if that's the case, that it's the whole word, or is. Actually, that would be an instance of is, because you want to make sure it's just that. Message begins with, so again, whatever the message they send begins with something, then that could be that. Message is thumbs up. That's a common thing. If someone does a thumbs up, with Facebook Messenger, that's where you can do a reply based off of that. And then message doesn't contain. So if it's a keyword that you're having them send, but like, let's say you have 2 keywords, and like, for example, with the comment growth tool, you can have multiple growth tools attached to a post. And let's say you want one to fire off if they say one thing, and one to fire off if they say something else, but you don't want it to fire off if they say the first thing. So that's an example of message doesn't contain. So you can have, I don't think I've ever really used that one actually myself. So of course my cat decides that she wants to be involved. Sorry. So that is kind of an overview of just the keyword feature, which is super powerful. They just added, again, if you haven't been involved with chatbots for a while and you're getting back into it, they added this new condition, which actually takes it to the next level, where you can have an and. So, and with the same thing, contains, whole word, begins with, or doesn't contain. So you can actually have multiple conditions that way to make it, your keyword functionality that much more powerful. The one thing they don't have yet that I wish that they had was an or, that you could change this to or. So I've asked them, like, can you also put or? So that way, you can say, if the word is like offer, and then and message contains this, or a heart emoji or whatever, right? So you can, that's the function where you could like add a bunch of things to it.
Yeah, how does it normally handle, and how do you kind of get around misspelling? Do you just add them all? Because I can imagine that you have to, right? Like everyone you could think of. It totally just popped in my head, like,
Yeah, so that's the thing, is you can't necessarily plan for everything. That's right. Also where I guess the job security for me when I'm running bots for clients, that it can't just be running, where I'm getting notified if somebody says something and it doesn't trigger an automation. I can go in really quick and send it. There's just so many other like little tips and things I've done over the years, just because of the other thing is, if you ask somebody for their email and the user input expires after 23 hours, and they respond like 2 days later, it's not waiting for that anymore. So you're just like, you have to go in and manually add the email and then get them back in the flow. So there's times where that happens, and you kind of just have to know how to properly set that up, or just manually take it over and message them after that. But so there's times where there's just things that happen that you're just like, I was not expecting that to happen, and that you just kind of have to run with it. But misspellings is definitely one that happens, that you try to put in all the different potential ways of misspelling stuff. That's helpful. Or you could do it this way too, like if it's the other thing, one of my clients wanted me to put in a keyword because she's launching her book, wanting to do brain dash friendly. And I'm like, that is going to be a disaster. I could already tell, because people are going to have the dash, they're going to leave out the dash, they're going to misspell friendly, they're just going to, they're going to say brain or mush them together. So I'm like, how about we just do one word? Let's just do brain and call it good. Sure enough, that's what we did. But of course, there's people who are, adding exclamation point, they still add things, but it's less. So you try to think about, how can people screw this up, and try and eliminate that from the beginning as much as possible. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, fun times with that. But that's also where, so again, this is very, simple, where it's not so much, smart. You're making it smart, but it's not using a third party like Dialogflow or ChatGPT, where those can be a little bit more smarter, I guess, in a way. But but things like this, if that's the only downside that you're experiencing is somebody misspelling something, and you don't really have any other use case for a super advanced bot, then I would not suggest integrating Janice or ChatGPT just to deal with a few misspellings. Like, you can handle that. That's not the amount of effort that you put in. Yes, exactly. You totally overkill. But yeah, so these are the keywords for the starting step. You'll let me just get out. Oh, let me just get rid of this here. Okay. That should work now. Okay. So and also you want to make sure it's activated. That's happened to me before where I'm like, oh, why are people not getting the automation? Oh, it's not activated. Same with if you do a trigger with the comment growth tool. Where's that at? Here we go. It's kind of similar where you can put in words here, but this one you can't say, doesn't contain or whatever. So this one is just like if there's any messages or comments on a post that has a specific word, then you can put it here and you can separate them by comments. But if you do want to exclude certain ones, then you can exclude that here. But another big thing, make sure you turn that on. So I've had one of my clients that was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this thing and let's set it up and connect it. And I'm like, okay, great. And then an hour later I go and look and I forgot to enable that just randomly. I don't know why. I mean, it's normally where I hit save and I hit enable right after that, but for whatever reason I didn't. I had to manually go and get all those people in. It's like 100 some people into the bot. So, and actually Dan did that too. And I told him, it's like, well, here's how you do this. Here's how you fix it. You have to manually go and paste into everybody's chat. He's like, no, I'm just going to delete it and I'm just going to repost it. I'm like, I'll blown up. Okay, so that's one piece of the AI that you can do just inside of ManyChat. The other piece is using conditions. So conditions are super powerful, but also are a source of a lot of potential screw up because there's so much that you can do with it. And seriously, my suggestion is after you have a condition set up and with messages and stuff, test it to make sure it does as you think it will. Because even sometimes when you're like, because it's the condition is or like tag is or isn't, and then you can have all or any that, sometimes you in your head, you think this makes sense, but it's not. So make sure you test it before you run it, because that will save you a headache and having to manually deal with it later on. But the conditions are powerful because you can have, actually I wouldn't have it on here. Let's go to this. With the user input, for example. So if you're asking somebody, like, let's say, for appointments, for example, like, you can make it where, they can just click and go to your Calendly, for example, or you can make it a little bit more conversational and ask them, like what day of the week works best for you. And then make sure you have it saved. I think I mentioned that before. If I have something in here, I've built so much stuff. I'll just do a new one. Day of the week. Okay. And custom user field is for the person going through it. So make sure that you choose that if you want it to be, based off of that. The bot field is bot wide. So a lot of times for that, like, if you have a webinar date or something, or you have something else that no matter who is going through the flow that you want them to see that or be able to access that data, that's the bot field. So make sure that usually people are good with the custom field, choosing that correctly over the bot field, but there's instances sometimes where you mean to have it be a bot field, but you accidentally choose custom field. So then it's not bot wide, it's just for that person. So, and then you can choose text, date and time. Date and time, or actually is a pick, so it opens up with like a calendar and they pick it. So in this instance where we're asking them what day of the week works best for you, you could have them choose a date, or you can just ask them to reply with day. So that's what in this instance I'm putting forward here. So when they choose the day of the week, that's when in your condition is where you can say, contains, doesn't contain, begins with, has any value, or is unknown. So this is where, if you want to say, make sure that it has the word day in it, right? Because let's say they say something like, I don't want to have an appointment, or not interested, right? So that doesn't have day in it. So you can make sure that it does have day. If not, then you can send them, another message saying, sorry, were you still interested, or something along those lines. But with day, then you can have it be another condition based off of that, where you can say with any of the days that, let's say day of the week. And actually, let's do this thing. This is something that I've done actually for one of my clients. Just say not available Saturday or Sunday, because who wants to take calls on Saturday or Sunday, right? But sometimes if you let people choose that day, they will. So this is where you can say day of the week, and then you can say isn't Saturday, or doesn't contain, we'll just do Saturday, and you put here any day of the week. Oh, actually, this is okay. I'm glad I did this, because I have to show you. This is an example. You know how I said just a bit ago about making sure you test it because you're not sure if it's going to work right or not? So here is an example of that. So you want to say, okay, this makes sense. If the day of the week doesn't contain Saturday or Sunday, then I want to say, okay, they picked a Monday through Friday, right? But in this instance, with it being any, if the day of the week doesn't contain Saturday, then, and also doesn't, but it does contain Sunday on it, this one will still fire as true. Does that make sense? So if they put Sunday as their day of the week, this would be true. And so it would still go and be true. So in this instance, you'd want to have all of the following, that it doesn't contain Saturday and doesn't contain Sunday, and have it that way. So that's where this can get tricky. And again, why you want to make sure you're checking, and especially if you're doing negatives, because sometimes too, you could be like, oh, it doesn't contain. So this is a no, right? Or the false, but it's like, oh wait, no, it's this one because it doesn't contain. So again, you can see how it gets conflicting and can be super confusing. So, and then in that instance, it's like, okay, great. When they choose the day, then you can ask them, like maybe time of day. So again, this is a little bit more conversational versus being exact, so if you're just wanting to know, like, what time, like morning, afternoon, evening, and then having them be able to, provide their phone number afterwards. But so that does make it more conversational, but it does make it take more steps versus them just clicking in a button to go choose a date and time. But there are instances where that I've come across where that wasn't an option, or it didn't make sense. So this is definitely helpful and a way to utilize user input for the benefit of user input and conditions to be, a smart bot where it's not just a bunch of buttons that they click. So another thing you can do is like browsing, like if they say, I'm interested in, I don't know, like I'm thinking of some of my clients. So for example, like somebody who is offering activities that like a local, like, yoga studio and stuff, where saying, hey, I'm interested in yoga classes on Mondays. So being able to use the bot to pull out some of that information using conditions is really helpful. The other piece, and actually I should mention this too, I know I mentioned doing just keywords, and then the next is Janice, and then ChatGPT. Well, there's actually a step between just keywords and conditions and Janice, would be potentially would be bot sheets, depending on your use case. So bot sheets is really good because you can end up using, and actually I have bot sheets installed on here, and it's only $19 a month. It's super cheap. So bot sheets for Messenger, where you can have it pull in from an advanced search, do a gallery, or just a selection list from a Google Sheet, and you have everything in a Google Sheet. They have all the potential keywords, and it would actually pull it from the keyword list, and you can have up to 2 search criteria. So you can put in the like the first column or criteria, sorry, that you'd want it to look up, and the search method being kind of the same thing that we saw earlier, but a little bit more advanced, like especially if there's like numbers and stuff, where you could even in your Google Sheet put in there like days and times that you're available for calls, and then being able to use bot sheets to help organize and choose those days and times. So that's also helpful if you're doing, you know, maybe it's not one-on-one, maybe it's a group type of appointment or activity where you can also look to see, like, let's say someone says, yeah, I want to attend on Wednesday at 2 p.m. And so it can look to see Wednesday at 2 p.m. It'll look, you know, for those 2, and then you can end up getting the value of how many spots are available. So like, let's say total there's 5 spots, but every time someone chooses a spot or gets a spot, it reduces it by 1. So then you can get that value and then send that to your bot and say, okay, well, there's 2 spots left, so they can have a spot. But then if it says 0, then it can say, hey, sorry, you know, there's no other spots available. So that's where you can get it a little bit more advanced, but also where, you know, as you can see with additional layers of advancement, that there's like, okay, if it's not sending it, it's like, okay, well, where do I look? You know, do I look in the Google Sheet? Do I look here with the setup? Is there something that I set up wrong here? Or is it something in here, like maybe, you know, you didn't choose the correct user input, you didn't save it. Like I said, I've done that before. You learn all these things as you're going through it, but there are instances where sometimes it's just you don't want to overcomplicate it, and you want to keep it as simple as possible with also having a great user experience for the user. So let me take a sip here. If anybody has any questions, make sure you ask them and I can go over them really quick. Okay. So in terms of having a smart bot, using keywords with conditions, simple way to do that, and it can be really useful. I've also like created a just 100% inside of ManyChat, not using anything else. Or created a macro calculator bot. So people would put in their weight, their height, if they're male or female, and then what, you know, if they're looking to gain weight, lose weight, maintain, and then based off of that information, I can then use conditions and action steps to calculate and set certain custom fields. Like if you set a custom field to, actually, you know what? I'm just gonna find this. I'm not gonna recreate it. Let me just find it, see if I can show you exactly how I did that. Let's do, you see, it's been 4 years since I created it initially. Hopefully it's still open. Okay, it does. Okay. So in this instance, let me pull up here so you guys can see. And you had GIFs and stuff and makes it fun. So this is an example of it being a smart bot that can do calculations. So first here we go, asking if they want metric or imperial. That's just a minor thing, but it does change obviously the numbers. But then asking them, you know, how old they are and if they're male or female. And then I just got the information from a online, you know, like, okay, what's the resting energy expenditure for a male versus a female. And then you can just see in the action steps, you can actually set certain custom fields to that. So you can set a number. So this would be also helpful, you know, if you are like, I have another client who's a coach who sells does high ticket coaching, and she does a quiz for her, as a lead magnet, right? So she uses that, and hers is with nutrition coaching. So she actually, because her ideal clients are doing this in general already, she utilizes this also, something along the lines of this with her potential clients, but also asking them questions about like their business currently, right? So if you have a formula that, there's formulas out there or Google Sheets that people say, oh, get my lead magnet that helps you determine your business, next steps for your business, or how to scale your business or whatever. You could actually create all that inside of your chatbot and have it be conversational and give them the answer. And then based off of the answer, tell them next steps of how you can help them improve, for example. So that's an example of how, I know I'm showing a macro calculator. That's probably not really useful to anybody's like high ticket coaching business, but you can see as an example of how this can actually be utilized as a lead magnet for your own business based off of, if you're doing calculations or you're asking them certain information to create a formula. Especially like if you're asking them, separate questions about their stats of their business, for example, like how much are they currently making? How much would they like to make? How much, at what point in time are they looking to, hit that amount? And so then your chatbot can actually do all that formula for them, again, in a conversational way. And then at the end, giving them the answer, because so you can set let me get to the very end here. So you can set a custom field to whatever your answer is based off of that formula, give them their answer. So they're getting value. And then you can say, next steps, hey, if you're interested in, taking your business to the next level, click below to schedule a call. So this is an example of kind of like a quiz where it's a great lead magnet that's engaging. That's not just a PDF that they download that you hope that they read and that they click and all that stuff, where you're pretty much implementing it into the chatbot directly. So, and also it's an example of where you can make your bot smarter of being able to do calculations and things to, it's not just click a button, send a message sort of thing. So, but yeah, so that was pretty much, one other thing I was going to go over are some rules, but I guess I can go over that really quick here. So the other thing is in your bot, you have rules that can help make your bot smarter to do admin tasks or to help move along and for user experience for different things. So some of these, like, didn't provide a phone number, you can follow up with them. Also in general, like let's say you have 3 different ways that people are coming into your chatbot. Let's say you have a lead magnet for a PDF, you have an appointment flow that people are scheduling into, and then you have, let's say a quiz or something. But in the end, you want to have all of these funnels lead to them booking a call. So what you can do is actually create a rule that will fire off after 23 hours. So you can do date-based trigger. Don't do a day, because with both Instagram and Facebook, at 24 hours of them last engaging, then you can't send any more automation. So your goal is to try and keep them engaged and keep them opening up that 24-hour window, or have them respond or whatever. But with your end goal, having that in mind, that this is like your last ditch effort. It's kind of like the pop-up window that comes up when you're exit intent with the website, right? So it's their last ditch effort to get that next piece. So what you can do here is I just do 23 hours. And then after, and then you can either have last interaction in Messenger or last interaction in Instagram. Definitely choose interaction and not last seen. Last seen is that they opened it and read the message. versus last interaction in Instagram that they actually send a message. So that's what helps determine when that clock starts for that 23 hours. So you put last interaction in 23 hours and then have your conditions. So of course, if you have somebody who, or your goal is to get people to schedule an appointment, then you don't want to send this to people who have scheduled an appointment, right? Because that would be weird and not relevant. So it could be like scheduled appointment. There we go. So, oh, not tag is. So you want to do tag isn't scheduled appointment. So that way this will send 23 hours to everybody who has engaged, who has not yet scheduled their appointment. You can add additional conditions too, like let's say, you know, maybe there's some other condition that you'd want, you know, a tag or a certain custom field or something that you want to have that be in there. So these though are all ands. So both of these have to be true for it to go. So there's no or on there. So if you wanted an or, then that would be where you'd have to just do another trigger and being the same thing and then just changing the tag. But this is an example then where you can have it send, set a custom, or not, sorry, send a flow, start a flow here, where then you can send that flow saying, hey, you know, if you're interested, you know, in, you know, that message that you want to send about that next step, then you can have that in that flow that will send. Now, my suggestion though too is that you don't have this, if in this scenario where you're going to want to send a last ditch effort message to people who haven't yet scheduled a call, I would say only once per contact, because if they reply back and say something, but they still don't have this tag, it'll send it to them again. So keep that in mind. That's another example where you want to make sure that you have your bot set up, the settings set up properly, where it will send only to those people one time, because that will be, it can get super annoying if you have it multiple. So especially as a follow-up every 23 hours after the last engage. And then you'll want to hit save and then hit active. So that's an example of a follow-up that really has helped a lot of my clients be able to get people who maybe have forgotten that they, or if they have an offer too. So I've even had it where they're coming in for something else, for some lead magnet. And like, let's say they have a challenge coming up or a webinar that they want to, at the last ditch effort, say, hey, I've got an upcoming webinar. Would you like to register for it? So they've come in for something else. And then that way you have a blanket that, you know, the week or so before the webinar, that you have this rule that will always send that message to people who have come in, who have not yet registered, to be able to let them know about it. And it's a lot more efficient than adding like the message that you would send to the end of every single one of your flows. Like that is just a disaster, because then you might forget that it's been added to one, or let's say you change something like, oh, I'm adding an extra date, then you have to go into each individual one and change it. Like, keep your sanity and just have it in one spot, and then have it fire off with a rule that's blanket across the whole bot. So rules are super powerful, and I highly suggest, you know, utilizing them for a follow-up like this, right at the last minute, that you can send them a message for anything, right? Just sending them something to, you know, try and get their email if they haven't yet given their email, or having them opt into a recurring notification. You can even just say, hey, I send out tips and suggestions every now and then, with, you know, are you interested in receiving those? If you are, you know, click the message button below, and then that way you can still then have their contact information. So there's a lot of different use cases, but it's super powerful. Okay, so I guess for the next 5 minutes or so that we got left, does anybody have any questions?
Everybody's wheels are probably turning. Like,
I know.
There's
Fire
so
hose.
much you can do. That's always how I feel about it. Like, there's just like the possibilities are so endless. So I guess here's one. that I'll throw to you. So you know there's like a million things that can be done, right? What would you say is the most, like, where would you suggest people start if they're like, okay, I've got, a webinar, an automated webinar, let's say. What would be the best way to get them started besides the things we've already covered, right? Like the lead magnet, a bot to kind of grow their audience, and then the webinar. Where would you go from there? What would be something else you think is worth them using what we're talking about here for their business?
Yeah. So yeah, obviously you think of, the webinar, as being the main part of your funnel, and then the top of the funnel, how to get people into there using your bot. Obviously, like you said, lead magnets, quizzes, anything, right, to get them that will lead them to register for the webinar. You can even do registrations into the webinar to directly from ads and stuff. So you can have a lot of different ways to do that. But other things that you can do, like during the webinar, you can give bonuses, saying, hey, everybody that's currently on this webinar, you can reply with this word and in my bot and get this bonus. And then what you can do with that is in your flow, for example, like let's say you wanted to make sure that that they only had it through that day, or like let's say your or during the webinar itself. And so you can actually have it set up where let's see here, current time is before, and then you can choose a specific date and time. So then you can say it, like let's say it's next Thursday, and then it's, your webinar starts at 5. So just have it stick, if it's an hour-long webinar, that they'd have to have that. And if the current time is before that, then they can get the bonus. But if it's after that, then nope. And you can say, I would definitely not just leave it blank, because people are going to be like messaging and saying, give them the next thing of like, hey, sorry, this is no longer available. But if you leave your email below, or if you are interested in this, maybe something else, to give them something, right? So there's always an opportunity to, provide value, but it's a consolation price. So that would be one way that you could definitely use your bot, in that type of scenario. And then also follow up too. So post webinar survey. So I do that a lot too in my clients' bots, where they have, an event, either it's a webinar or it's like a 5-day challenge. And then, the other cool thing with like a 5-day challenge is you can send out notifications to remind people before it's going to happen. And then after it's over, send them, say, hey, thanks so much for attending. And you can do like a post-event survey and just ask a couple questions. You can either provide the options for them to choose or leave it open-ended and ask them, like to reply like, hey, what's the one thing that really, that this event really helped you with? And then after they reply, then you can also then follow up with maybe your offer that you offered during the event, and saying, hey, don't forget you have through tonight to get this, get the course or get my special that I'm running right now, or downsell them on something else, right? So that's being able to use the bot to do things like that is invaluable, because then you can use that for customer research.
Makes sense. So something that Jen and I have talked about before is at some point when we grow, having a bot that helps people with just a very simple support questions. For us, it's a little, there's some things that I think it could really do well, like pointing people to a location of a resource and things like that. And then there's other things that it's just like, obviously not going to do as well. How do you suggest people approach those things? Do you think that it's worth it to have people go out from a support email to a bot? If there's like, at what point do they make that decision, I guess is what I'm saying. If they feel like they can, fill it with like, I don't know, 20, 25 things, if they feel like a certain percentage of their support would be handled there, or how do you talk through those things with clients?
So there's a couple of spots. So before purchase, before they're a customer, have it as an FAQ. So it's great for overcoming objections. And also helping support by saying, hey, you have any questions, check out the FAQ. And, like for courses or for things that you're offering, you can always be like, here are the common questions, and just offer the answer with the call to action, clicking the button to actually go purchase, right? So it's great to use for overcoming objections. Now, for people who are current clients or customers or whatever, you can definitely use your chatbot to help answer those top questions. You can even have it for onboarding. Like I've done onboarding chatbots to help people, like let's say they have a bunch of customers that they're onboarding at once, that it would just take a lot of time and take their customer support a lot of time going through emails, seeing what they forgot, what they have. And then that way that the bot will actually lead them through. You can actually get people to reply, submitting images that, let's say they need to submit something. Could even do homework. I've done that before, where with a course that people then are reminded, to go through the lessons, and then afterwards gives them homework and says, hey, okay, based off of what you just saw, here's your homework assignment, and then they can submit it either written or a file or image or whatever. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use that. And then the real big benefit is the fact that it's pretty much a support chat too, that you can have your support people inside of ManyChat where they get notified when somebody asks a question. So it's right there. You don't have to worry about going through a bunch of emails. So that way it's easier for the customer as well as the support person, because they get notified right when there's a message.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I love that idea with the homework. It seems like that would be, especially if you're teaching a live course.
Yeah,
that would be super helpful.
Exactly. And then also if you have like, for example, one of my clients does a 5-day challenge. And so every day sending out the notifications, let people know it's going to start. And then also sending out, and don't forget to click and get the worksheet for that day, right? So providing that value, but the bot is providing that because, we know not everybody checks their email all the time. So that's the benefit of the notification with the message, but also providing them the worksheet right there where they click. And it takes them to just download it from like Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever. So they have it right there too for the beginning of that day's lesson.
Yeah, for sure. And you could probably even follow up afterwards and bring them somewhere else, or even just ask for testimonials and all of that right in the bot.
Yep, exactly. And with that 5-day challenge, she pitches her course after day 2. So then I have it where the notification goes out, and if they click to join live or they click the button, then it starts a timer for 63 minutes, which will be like right after that is over. That will then reiterate like, hey, don't forget about my special on my course right now. Click here to get more information. Here's the FAQs, things like that. So that way it's the timing is set up properly, that she knows that she's going to be done with teaching that day's lesson for that challenge, that then it just follows right up and is great for reminders, and it gets people clicking because it's right there. They don't have to, go and type in the URL or anything. So there's a lot of benefits of using the bot, before, during, and after any sort of events, and getting, clients.
Yeah, for sure. Reducing friction is so important for conversion, that I can see how that would be so helpful, because if you think back to like kind of conditional emails for webinars attendance, that's like kind of the standard, is that you just do these conditional emails. You have to have the separate way of knowing where they're at in the video, if they're showed up, and there's all this extra stuff. But you're hoping that they look at their email if they're not watching the webinar. So you're losing, There's just friction there, right? There's just, which makes sense.
And the other thing that's, next level too, is with the APIs with ManyChat is like, for example, let's say you use EverWebinar or Webinar Jam, you can actually connect that API system to your chatbot. So not only can they, you ask them if they want to, you can ask them if they want to register, and it'll actually provide the, especially if it's an evergreen webinar, you can give them the just-in-time time that's available or the upcoming times, and it'll all be there in the bot depending on when they come through, because it's pulling it from that API. And then of course, with, for example, with you're saying like with emails where it sends that information to an email system, with tags and stuff. You can do the same thing with the API to send that into the chatbot to make the chatbot smarter to say, okay, does this person have this tag? Did they leave beforehand or did they see the offer? So then that way your messaging is relevant to them as well. So,
Right.
and then that just takes it to the next level because chatbot or, having a message is much more engaging than, an email.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, that is very cool. I didn't know they integrated like that. That's awesome.
Yeah. API, it's amazing. Again, it's can be complicated, but once you start to understand, how JavaScript and APIs work, then it opens a whole new world.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean because I work with Gary, and man, there's so many times that we'll like look at something new, and his first questions are like, "How much can I get my hands on? Like, what can I do? Can I make this look different? Can I pull everything out?"
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I
Cool.
don't think we have any questions. I think everybody's probably their minds are full. There's so
Thinking.
much.
Yeah.
But as far as next month, we can go over and I'll try to think of if you guys have questions, by the way, you guys are always free to send them to me. You can email them me directly at carla@getclients.com. I would love to know because I think what could be fun is I know you'll come up with examples, but also I'll try to think through like what could be a good examples to throw together too. Some good questions and stuff. But there's
and
so much
also
to play with.
when you're built, well, exactly. And if you guys are building your bots and you're running into anything, just post it in the group and tag me. I'm in there. So you can say, hey, I'm having this issue. What's going on with this, or this is what I'm trying to do and it's not doing that. What is this? Why is it doing this? So yeah, feel free to just tag me in the group and I can help troubleshoot or give you suggestions or whatever too. So a lot of times it's like you hear this and you're like, oh, this makes sense, and then you start diving in, you're like, wait, what did you say?
Wait a minute.
Or wait, how does like this is kind of like my scenario, but mine's a little different. I've had that so many times with things, so I totally understand that. But yeah, just feel free to tag me in it.
Yeah, we did that. So 2 days ago, I don't know if you saw any of Dan's stuff for the Grant Cardone JV, but he offered sort of the way that he's selling through from the Instagram bot, right? He told people he would walk them through. And so we did it as a workshop. And you know what was interesting is like when you break down how people are doing these things, right? It is exactly like you said. Everything can make perfect sense, but then for whatever reason you don't know what to say, right? Or so you get hung up on the wording, which is like that's his wheelhouse, or you get like you have an error or whatever, right? You have trouble getting into setting up ManyChat or whatever the thing is, like, and breaking those into chunks and being able to ask questions also is super helpful because like you said, it's easy to be here and just see all the potential, but we're all, I would assume, busy. And so then you sit down, you start to build, and you hit a wall and you're like, okay, maybe I just dropped this, which I get, and this is so powerful that I don't want people to miss out on the opportunity, especially with the AI and stuff. I feel the same way about Chat GPT. I don't know if anybody here saw Dan's post on Facebook about it, but we're going to cover this, I think, in his call this month. And it is like the first thing I learned was that you just needed to find an expert, someone like yourself with the chatbots, right? I'm thinking of like Sean Vosler, I want to say is his name. Oh my gosh, I'm messing it up. Anyways, he's been in the AI world for a while. Find an expert who actually knows this stuff, and you will be able to shortcut so much because when you mess around with something that's a powerful tool and there's all these possibilities, you just get lost. And especially with prompt writing, right? Like if you don't know how to feed it the correct information, you're not going to get a good output. And then you're going to look at it like, okay, everybody's like, I'm not even going to forget it, right? You're just going to be done with it because it's going to be pretty generic, which was my experience the first time I tried. But then I went and looked at like prompts and I was like, oh, wow, there's a lot here. Like you could go kind of wild. So better to go to an expert like yourself and go, hey, listen, I think here's my business. I think I want to use
Yeah,
chatbots for XYZ. What do you think? And then to really kind of narrowly focus on that, because you'll just get pulled off into every shiny object possibility, overwhelmed and all that good stuff. So yeah.
exactly. And like I said at the beginning, knowing what your end goal is and
Yeah.
seeing what's the simplest way to do that without overcomplicating it. Like, you know, because you don't want to cause yourself a whole bunch of extra headaches. I actually had a client who it was a water park, and I set up everything, you know, FAQs, all that stuff. And then they're like, we don't want everybody to have to always press buttons. I'm like, but pressing buttons is less work than having them typed out. Like they just wanted it to be they wanted the functionality to be cool. I'm like, you do realize that with having people respond, asking questions, that's going to miss stuff. Like the clicking buttons is going to get your result way faster, but they wanted it cool. And I'm just like, well, it sucks that I set this whole thing up and now you want to change it.
What did they want you to, they wanted it just to predict and give them information, like spit it all out?
Yep. And so I told them, I was like, well, if I'm going to set that up, I was going to charge them way more. And they're like, never mind. Okay. Because you have to train it, right? You have to get it all connected. And I said, you get the same end result, maybe even better with just providing, it's a water park, so people asking about, like tickets and stuff, you can still use keywords, so you can still utilize some of that, but having buttons instead of like, what's your question? Giving a list of FAQs is super helpful because maybe somebody's like, I don't know exactly what my question is, or I'm just kind of curious. I want to just browse, right? And then once they're browsing through it, and then if it's like, oh, this spurs a question that's not on there, then they can ask, and oh, how about we have, an actual person respond to them?
Yeah, like, thank you. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, totally. The button thing too seems like it would, I feel like in bots, part of the refining that you talked about before with the misspelling, right? The things that you have to just kind of figure out as you go. I feel like when you see some people hitting a point, like hitting a sticking point, you probably, that's probably valuable information. So if you're just spitting everything out, aren't you going to miss out on opportunities where people are like, I don't know, I'm dropping off here, I'm whatever. It just doesn't seems like you're losing out on some important data, right?
And that's the other big thing is you can see in your flow, like let's you have, the end goal that you have set up on the flow in the start, you can see where are people dropping off at. And if you have it all open-ended stuff and you're utilizing the default reply a lot, then you can see where, like, oh, okay, well, a lot of people are interested in this topic because this flow from the responses is going off a lot, but you're not sure exactly how they got there. So that's where having a more structured flow is really helpful because it will actually show you like, okay, especially because you want the end goal, you want to lead them down. You don't want to necessarily give them whatever way they want to go. It's just like a website, right? Where you don't want to give them all these different places to click. You want to take them one spot, right? So in the chatbot, it's like giving them maybe one or two options. I mean, there's even instances where I have a chatbot where I give them two options, but it goes to the same place, but it's just giving them like, yeah, that sounds great, or I need more info. And then the response is slightly different based off of that, but it still goes the same information. Because in that way you can see where, the stats are of people engaging and where they drop off. So then you can make adjustments.
Yeah, for sure. It's all about refining.
Yeah.
Like most things, right?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, good stuff. All right. Thank you so much, Mackenzie. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining, everybody. And I will see you guys soon. Oh, and keep your eye, everybody that's here, keep your eye on your email. You're going to be getting an update on the new community experience. It's going to be very cool. You'll see what I mean, so don't miss out. I think we're sending out a warning email, so you'll get a warning. A warning, keep your eye out. But definitely keep your eye out for that because it's I'm excited. I'm super excited. So, and these it'll be even more. Yeah, it's gonna be great. Having the I don't know if you've messed around in school, but having like the calendar, and have you been in there before?
No, I haven't. I've heard of it and I've seen like other people using it. So that's really exciting that it's actually going to be moving everything there. Yeah.
It's interesting because I have such a love-hate with Facebook. So there is like a thing with changing, right? But having it focused on like when you're doing business is is pretty cool, number one. And then number two, there's a built-in calendar that actually for these events at the top of the kind of open discussion community site will like flash before they happen. Like there's
Oh,
like text that,
nice.
so it brings everybody's attention, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm definitely, and they're
That's
adding new
awesome.
stuff because it's Sam. So I got to connect with his team and be like, all right, guys, I have a list of features. Where do I put my request? Which is fun because when you get to be part of the growing of something, it's cool. I've already seen they've done so much already. So it is very cool.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
that's exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So, all righty, guys, I
Looking
will
forward
let
to
you
that.
all go and I will talk to you guys later. Bye,
All
guys.
right, sounds good. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.